For those of you that have not been involved or haven't heard from Greg, I came across him through some mutual friends. I've seen him speak at several occasions, and we instantly hit it off because he's a very genuine guy in an industry where sometimes it's lacking. The man is who you see, and he's just absolutely fantastic. So Greg is obviously many things. He's a motivational speaker, he's an author, he's a film producer, he's a game changer. Greg, thank you so much for being here today.
There we go. And the crowd goes wild. Ah! And by the way, the chat is open. Anyone wants to chat and say hi, ask questions, or interrupt, just do so. Let's chat it out.
Yeah, cool. Well, Greg, listen, you're coming to London, and we're going to talk about that later. But I wanted just to find out a little bit more about yourself. Kind of like, tell me, where were you brought up, and tell me, what was school like for you?
Oh my gosh. So I grew up in the mean streets of a place called Del Mar, California. It's a little beach community, West Coast. And it was so interesting because my generation never really experienced all those, rags to riches story. We lived a pretty good life. And so, I don't have one of those poor me type of backgrounds. The whole realities are I was kind of a privileged child growing up, and I'm very fortunate and blessed. And I also understand that sometimes we don't have to have this sad song to have success in our life. Now, when it comes to school, there's a complete different story. I barely graduated high school. I mean, I'm dyslexic. I can't read, can't spell, can't write. By the way, everyone should play me in Words with Friends. You'll win. But I've been published in 76 books, 45 languages, and I just got an honorary doctorate in literature. So if that doesn't prove anything's possible, I don't know what does.
So were you trouble in school, apart from obviously struggling with writing and stuff? Were you trouble?
Nah, none of that stuff. I grew up on the beach. I wanted to go, down to the shore and have fun and chase girls and drive cars and just live. I mean, it was the 70s and 80s, and it was a great, great time to be alive. I always joke about people. I go, you don't know how tough we're in my little area. I was part of a street gang called the Del Mar Posse. At night, we take into BMWs and we detail them. I go, we're a real tough group.
And tell me, what was your kind of, I don't know if you're anything like myself. I mean, I did all sorts of things, from working in a bar, DJ, nightclubs. But what was your kind of first job? What did you start doing and grafting at?
Yeah, I worked at the San Diego Zoo as my first job, got fired, and then I worked in a steakhouse, got fired, and then I realized that I could mow lawns and I could become a landscaper and do it on my own terms. And that's what I did. I was an entrepreneur from very young, 16, 17 years old, and that's been the mindset I've always had. I go, man, why have someone else control my life and tell me where to go and what to do when I could be in control of that? And if I had success or setbacks, it's all on me.
And was it? I know, obviously, as you the years have gone by, and obviously you talk about the importance of being mentored and stuff like that. Anyone that inspired you when you were younger? Anyone in particular that mentored you in some way?
Yeah, at the time, I mean, my mom was an entrepreneur, and my dad was a very successful guy. So I've always had that mindset. And I remember my mom when I was a kid. I was like 14 years old. We're driving down the road, and they're talking about how there was a meeting going on, and at the place that my mom was running, no one cleaned up the night before, and it was kind of a mess. And I go, oh man, I would never go clean that up. And she turned around, she goes, pop quiz. And go, what? And she goes, look, she goes, you got a very biggest, meeting of your life coming up. And he goes, the place is a mess, the bathroom's a mess. Do you, 1, clean it yourself? 2, change the meeting location? Or 3, do you fire the people that didn't do it? And I go, I'd fire those people and I'd change the locations. And she goes, that's a shame. She goes, you'll never be a leader. I go, what? And she goes, I wish that you could understand the power of being an entrepreneur. And I go, what do you mean? She goes, no. She goes, an entrepreneur, a real business leader, will do whatever it takes. She goes, I took off my mink coat. I cleaned the toilets. I cleaned the bathroom. I cleaned the thing, because you never should be too big that you're not willing to do what it takes to get the job done. And that at 14 just poo in my head. And so to this day, I remember when I was running a company called WorkSmart, one night I was painting the doors and I was cleaning the place. It was after hours, and one of the employees comes by and goes, why are you doing all this? I went, pop quiz. I gave him the same thing. Next thing you know, we're both painting.
So what was your first dabbers into entrepreneurship? How did you start?
That's it. The neighbors would pay me $10 to mow the lawn. And then I'd hire the neighborhood kids for $5 to mow the lawn for me. And that's what I did. And so I understood the power of being an entrepreneur. But more importantly, I liked the idea of having the control that things could get done in a systematic way. I'm into systems.
And from then on, what happened?
Well, that's it. I mean, that's as far back of childhood stuff that you go. And then the harsh reality for me is I got into sales. I remember I was 17, 18. I was leaving to, go into marketing. And I wanted to become a sales rep. And my dad looks at me and says, son, he goes, we'll take you to any college you want. Well, anywhere you want to go, we'll send you to school. I says, no, I'm going to pass. I go, I just want to go out and get into sales and marketing. This is what I want to do. And he looked at me. He said, son, you're never going to make money just talking to people. And here we are today. Go figure, right?
It's funny how those things, and listen, you took it the right way as far as you were able to turn it around. But unfortunately for many people, sometimes these hypnotic suggestions that they give us in life, hold people back all their life. So Greg, you've just had a phenomenal career. I mean, looking at what the books that you've written, the people that you've collaborated, the people that you've interviewed. I've seen you interview so many great people. You're so natural at it. By the way, what makes a great interviewer?
Authenticity, probably the old cliche word that's beat to death, but that's for me. I mean, the whole idea is I don't Google people before I meet them. I don't want to know too much information, because what happens is subconsciously we'll see an interviewer those same questions that everyone else asks, and we ask them ourselves. So what I like to do is be on the cuff, and just be human and ask them questions to get to their heart. Because if you can get to their heart as fast as possible, what happens is you'll get to the story. One of my greatest ones I ever did, the turnaround, was a guy named Mike Helton. He's a guy who ran NASCAR. He's the one who turned NASCAR what it is today. And we're doing this interview, and it was just cold, and there was like 30 people watching and cameras and all this stuff. And it was a horrible interview, to be honest with you. And I just stopped. I says, you know what, Mike? I go, I'm done. He looked at me and go, what? I go, this is a horrible interview. It's probably the worst one I ever did. I go, I think I'm wasting your time and mine. So I got up and I started taking off our microphones. And I looked over and I go, hey, Mike, I go, let me ask you something. I go, you know when you came home with that first cardboard proverbial check of $1 million? He goes, yeah. I go, what'd your mom say? He goes, she told me to take out the trash. She didn't care anything but my dad. And he sat down. And all of a sudden he started just being himself. And he reached in his coat pocket and he took out this tattered piece of paper. I go, what's that? He goes, well, this is how NASCAR became NASCAR. This is how everything I do in my life. And I go, what is it? He goes, it's called the Cowboys Ethics Code of the West. And it was all tattered. He goes, I've never left home without it. And it was like, ride for the brand, say less, but speak less and say more, and do what's right, and all that different stuff. And he goes, like when we were doing the Winston Cup and we didn't want to promote smoking anymore to children, we changed it. And here's what we did and the reasons why we did it. And it was the greatest interview. And as I was leaving, the vice president pulls me aside and says, you know what? I've known him for 20 years, and I never knew he had that in his pocket every single day this whole time. Mm. And to me, that's what it is. How do you get to someone's heart?
Amazing, amazing. And a lot of the times, I mean, when I've seen you interview people, and obviously, you've gone down the route of that authenticity, and I remember in particular that. And I do want to talk a little bit more about with Frank Shankwitz with Make-A-Wish Foundation. And yeah. That was such a great turning point. I remember when you shared that story and you were asking him that question. Can you share that?
Yeah, I was interviewing him for a book called Stickability. And I was done with it. And again, we're taking off our microphones. It seems like all my stuff comes at the end. And I said, hey, by the way, Frank, what was your wish? He goes, what do you mean? I go, well, you're the founder of Make-A-Wish. What did you ask for? He says, no one asked me. I says, what? I go, I want to be the guy who grants the wish of the founder. I go, what is it you want? A Ferrari, Lamborghini, you name it, I'm going to get it to you. And he says, I just want my story to be told so my grandkids will know I did something. And he signed over his life rights and said, I'll make it into a major feature film. The only problem is I've never made a feature film. But he trusted me, and it's taken 5 years and millions of dollars. And as you know, just 2 nights ago, we just won Arts for Peace, most inspirational film of 2018. And the guy who awarded us was the founder of the E channel. And now it looks like some great doors are opening for distribution, and only the future we'll see what it holds.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I had the privilege of watching a private screening at Secret Knock at Greg's event. And I got to say, everyone in the room was like, wow, it was like a goosebump moment. And I know you've achieved and have done a lot of things in your life. But, you know, as someone that has promoted and produced and created a few things, I just don't think there must be anything much more empowering than that. The work of 5 years, the challenges you've gone through, and it translated into this phenomenal movie. How great it was, Greg. How great it is, that film. Congratulations, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. You know, it's kind of interesting. And this is a personal share. But this year in February, I had one of the greatest moments and a low moment at the same time. And it was the same circumstance. I crossed off the very last item on my bucket list. I'm only 55 years old. And it was interesting is, you know, when I was a kid, I had 80 of the most insane possible things you could think of. And I finally accomplished them. And it's such a surreal moment to do that. When you look back and go, that's it. And then it's kind of like, you know, what is the next thing? And I realized out of everything that inspired me to do the things I did, the greatest ones were the ones that scared me the most. Jumping out of the airplane, running with the bulls in Pamplona, and doing the craziest stuff. So now I'm going to do a new list, but it's just going to do what scares you. Those are the things I'm going to start crossing out.
Oh my God. And I can imagine your list must have been scary already. So God knows what that's going to be. And listen, we'll just finish with the film because Greg, I remember when you decided to go ahead and do the film, and obviously, you know, you didn't have any experience in producing and making it happen. You raised some money, and then you had all these issues and challenges. Share that little bit of story when you started the film because you had money, and then all of a sudden, you know, there was no more money coming in, but you carried on.
Yeah, you know, it's part of life. You know, it's the way it is. It was definitely one of those things called the defining moment. Yeah. And we were ready to make this movie about a year ago, and everything was set. We were 2 weeks out. They were building the movie locations and everything, getting everything dialed in. And our two biggest investors had to pull out because of the storm that happened in Houston and flooded everything. You know, it was not on them. I mean, it was a natural disaster. And we didn't know what to do. We didn't have enough money to make this film. And so I called everyone I knew in Hollywood, Oscar winners, the whole bit. I said, how do you handle this? And they said, you got to stop. It says you cannot go forward. And for me, I just didn't want to choose that answer. And I knew I had enough money for 2 full weeks. So we went out, and I figured after 2 weeks, we'd, you know, call it a wrap. And 2 weeks in, all of a sudden, I started inviting all my rich friends to come to the movie set. They go, hey, you want to be in the movie? And I put them in the background and go, hey, we're still looking for funding. And they'd start writing checks. It got us through week 3. Week 4, I said, all right, well, if people can't invest, maybe they can do it as a bridge loan. So I started doing that, whatever I could do to piecemeal together. And then the 5th week, we were done. All the money was gone. It was the last week of filming. And the next day, we were going to shut down and just come back home. And I remember Kitty, Frank's wife, the co-founder of Make-A-Wish Foundation, pulled me aside. She says, look, goes, we have a little bit of money left over in our retirement account. Let me give it to you because I know things are rough. And I went, no. I go, but thank you. I go, that was all the incentive I need to find a way. And I rallied the troops and said, look, we might have to delay our payments. We might have to do whatever we got to do, but let's make this happen for these two. And we did, and crossed the finish line. And now it looks like we got a hit on our hands. But I guess the moral of that one is it's easy to quit when the going gets tough. But just like the book we did called 3 Feet from Gold, the secret is not to give up when it's just 5 minutes before the miracle happens.
And it's where great stories come from. It's just from those moments of adversity and hitting rock bottom. And I think, you know, a lot of people see those as you know, moments that they don't wish to remember, but it's what makes us stronger. It's what makes us who we are. Yes,
but again, this is where I kind of got mixed emotions on it. I don't know you have to hit rock bottom. Again, in San Diego, where I was born and raised and the way I grew up, I've done pretty well my whole life. I mean, my whole life. And so I don't know we have to do that. Even, you know, I've got 30 years sobriety. You know, I don't drink, smoke, and use drugs, but I never hit one of those bottoms. You know, I mean, when I stopped drinking, I was 24, lived in La Jolla and drove a BMW and made a boatload of money. I just chose that new life. And I'm finding for myself, you don't have to go all the way down. before you start having some ups. You don't have to hit the ground.
Mm.
And these are some of the stories that are really inspiring me. Like the one person you met at Secret Knock, his name's Rob Angel, who created the board game Pictionary. You know, when he was 20 years old and came out of this game and had the influx of all that millions of dollars, he knew that he'd blow it unless he sought counsel from other mentors. And he went to the guy who did Trivia Pursuit. And they said, what do you do with all this dough? And he told him. And it was like some tax-free, the most unsexy thing in the world. He said, but you're guaranteed X amount of interest. And he goes, if you put that money away for the rest of your life, you've got that interest coming on. Just live off that. And that's what he's done, never working a day in his entire life, but being smart enough to seek that counsel and not have to have the riches, the rags, and rags to riches story.
But do you think, I mean, with all the people that you've interviewed, and I know it's not a common denominator for everyone because it's not, but do you think there are these defining turning points in people's lives?
Absolutely. But again, they don't have to be a bottom. They could just be an aha, an epiphany. Right now, I'm having literally the greatest aha, life-changing moment. This second, I mean, this morning, I have the greatest thing happening to me, but it's the most positive thing in the world. And so the whole thing is, like I'm saying, is sometimes what if your greatest opportunity is a blessing? Like, here's one of the great things that I've discovered this recently. It's a kind of a woo-woo thing, but I'm just going to give you a preface. What if everything we wanted, everything we prayed for, everything we asked for from God or the universe was given to us, only we just didn't like the packaging in which it came on? And this is what changed my life. And I thought, what if I sat there and said, God, please, I need $100, please give me $100. And a guy pulls up with a bunch of aluminum cans in the back of his truck and says, hey, take these off my hands. I'm running late for something. And we go, I don't want those stinky things. Well, the value is worth $100, but we don't like the packaging, so we sent it away. And I went, well, what if I had other epiphanies like that? What if I've been turning away stuff because I didn't like the way it was packaged? So this year, I've changed my viewpoint to what is possible. And all of a sudden, this influx of an opportunity, of a greatness led my way without the downside, only the upside. Because again, I believe the universe and God is abundant and wants us to have all this stuff. But we were trained by all these motivational speakers and memes and bullshit that, you know, you have to pay your dues and start at the bottom and work. I think that's old way of thinking. And if you look at the most modern millionaires and billionaires, they're not doing that. They're building Instagrams. They're building Airbnb. They're building all these things without having to have these amazing, you know, pitfalls. And so I'm encouraging people and saying, what if we draw a line and say, okay, I'm done. I did all that. Now, what if we take that information and move forward and look for what's possible? And what if everything is being given to us? We just have to look at the packaging and be open-minded to it.
That's great advice, Greg. And I think that open-minded comes from asking yourself the right questions. I think a lot of people tend to attract negativity because they're just living in that mindset, aren't they, of you know, what's going to happen next and bad.
Okay. This is the biggest thing of the most successful people. They live in this whole concept of, I call it law of vibration. The law of attraction is whatever. I mean, you do not attract what you want. You just attract more of what you already are. That's what the law of vibration really is. And what happens is, like you said, it's the questions in which we ask. Unfortunately, the universe, God, again, whatever you want to call it, is very literal. It's like Google. You have to be very specific in your question. Unfortunately, the questions that most people ask is, you know, God, why does this always happen to me? And the universe says, well, this is why, you dumbass, and give you exactly more of that because that's what you asked. Yeah. Or you say, when is this going to fall apart? Tuesday at 4:00, Greg, because that's the question. But if you sit there and say, what's the opportunity in this little challenge that I'm not seeing? What's a opportunity of a relationship that's right around me that I'm not capitalizing on? All of a sudden, those answers will start coming. Yeah. And that's the state that I'm in right now. That's what the most successful, happy, productive people are. We're going, man, what's possible? And all of a sudden we start attracting that.
Well, listen, you're spot on. And I'm not taking this opportunity to plug it in, but it is very appropriate. It's just because that's in 10 years in promoting all these seminars, having seen all these speakers, attended all these workshops, read all the books, kind of, it does come down to that. And it's down to the mindset, what you think, the quality of your thoughts, and obviously asking yourself the right questions. So yeah, absolutely, that's what's going to happen, Damas. So Greg, tell me, you've been speaking all over the place, all over the stage. You've interviewed all sorts of people. What does it take to become a phenomenal speaker, or at least a speaker that stands out and says something that is congruent with their life and who they are?
Well, it's, those are big, questions there, but I'm going to start from the very beginning. This is what makes me a little bit better speaker, I think, than the next guy, is I show up early and I walk the stage and I look for where like the light hits a certain spot. And I make sure every time I'm going to hit a point, I'm standing in that exact spotlight because I want to make sure that that point gets hit home. And I realize the backdrop behind us is either black or it's white. That's it. Those are your only two options. So I stopped wearing black jackets so I look like a talking head. And I started wearing, red or blue or green or just something a little different. So you pop and you all of a sudden the audience members feel like they're connected to you. And it's doing these simple little acts and getting off stage and walking to the audience and standing on a chair so people can see you and speaking at them and looking them in the eye. It's these little nuances that separate you from the 95% who dream of success to the top 5% who actually achieve it. And to answer your question, to be a great speaker, I think it comes down to something called songs. It's like a hit list, like a song list. So for example, a song is 3 minutes. There's a beginning, middle, and end. And if you ever hear me speak, all I do is I tell a series of songs and I just sing them together. And what happens is if someone says you got an hour to speak and they go, man, we're running behind, you got 12 minutes. No problem. I'll just do 3 songs. I'll do my best ones. And they say, hey, no, you got to stretch it out an hour and a half. No problem. I'll do a double best of album, piece of cake. I can never get thrown off because I have these songs. Where other people want to memorize and master a big speech, I just want to master 3 minutes of impact at a time. So when I get on stage, I know when I say something, people have a real takeaway and feel it.
Thank you. That is great advice, everyone. So I hope you made some notes there. You're a great storyteller, Greg.
Thank you.
I've seen you.
By the way, I pulled this off. This came yesterday. It's kind of cool, and I know everyone won't be able to see it, but it's kind of cool. This is Billy Joel, his set list for when he's on stage singing. This is one of them I just pulled off the internet. Okay. And I go, that's exactly what my speaker set list looks like. So when I get up on stage, I'll go, I'm going to tell the story of this, 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 and I write it down. And go, oh, you know what? Maybe that's not a good group for that. I'll tell this story. And when I get up, I just set that piece of paper down in front of me and I just go down my set list, just like a musician.
Don't you think there's a lot of people that don't actually know how to tell stories
No, I believe that people are unorganized, and I don't believe that people master their craft. So I believe everyone can tell a story. Everyone at home, trust me, you're going home and you're telling your husband or wife what happened at work today. You're a storyteller. And so the fact is everyone's got the gift. It's just having it in a clear, concise way. But the main thing is you never tell a story without a point, and you never have a point without a story behind it, because that's what people remember. I'm going to give you all an example. Do you mind if I give one right now?
Go ahead.
One of my greatest interviews I ever did was the power of adaptability and adjustability and embracing what you don't have. So many people look at what they're lacking. When I sat down with Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, I said, how did you and Steve Jobs have so much success? And he says, we embraced our lack. Rather than running from it, we ran toward it. What do you mean? He says, well, when these little microchip processors came out, they were expensive. We could afford one of these chips. He goes, so Jobs sold his Volkswagen. I sold my calculator. We pulled our money to buy one of these little microchips. He goes, other businesses like Hewlett Packard, they could create machines that go from point A to point B with 20 chips because they had all the money of God. He said, so I had to pull away 5 and configure a way to go from A to B using 15. And then I'd pull away another 5. And get it to go at 10, till finally we could go from A to B using our one chip. He goes, we were not trying to be innovative. We were not trying to be cool or slick. We could afford one chip. But by embracing that as an opportunity, we found the shortest, cleanest path of least resistance. And then by doing that, we changed the way people do personal computing for the rest of the world, for the rest of your life. It says, where could you be in your own business right now if you stop looking at your greatest challenge, your greatest obstacle, but it might just be your greatest blessing, your greatest opportunity in disguise. So there you go. There's 3 minutes, right? Boom, boom, boom. So beginning, set it up. Here's what we're going to tell you. Tell a story, point at the end. And the most important thing about that is the audience sees themselves in there. Instead of a speaker getting them goes, let me tell you about me, me, me. It's about, let me tell you something. And you put the spotlight over here, tell a story where you see yourself in that story. That's where you have the real takeaway.
That was great, Greg. Thank you for that. Very quick.
And by the way, when we're out there in London, I am going to bring the heat. I've been working on a set list that I am going to crush. I'm going to tell story after story. When you're in the audience, you're going to be fired up. You're going to be pissed. You're going to be happy. You're going to go through all the emotions. I'm so excited about it.
I'm so excited, Greg. Tell me. So for those of you that are listening now for the first time, and this was one of the reasons why obviously I wanted to do the webinar today, is that Greg is coming to London to the Best You Expo. That's on the 15th.
Woohoo!
Yes. And your talk is going to be about one of your books, which is Stickability. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So like I said, I've done a boatload of books, but I also get to write the Think and Grow Rich series through the Napoleon Hill Foundation. And what's really cool is that the biggest topic is the power of stickability. It's the power to persevere. First, there's a dream, then there's a challenge, and then there's victory. Unfortunately, almost everyone quits in the challenge. So the time we're going to have together, I'm going to share with you amazing stories, these little songs, so to speak, where you can see examples of perseverance in action, where you can see yourself in there and be inspired so that you can go home and do the same.
Tell me a little bit more about your work with the Napoleon Foundation, because, you know, you brushed through that very quickly, but you've done some phenomenal work with them.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a decade now. So Napoleon Hill in 1908 was given a letter by Andrew Carnegie to go interview all of his friends and family, his letter of introduction. 100 years later, in 2008, the president and family of Napoleon Hill gave me that same type letter. It was a letter of like a Willy Wonka ticket to meet anybody. And so I can travel around the world to meet the most powerful and influential humans alive. And then I tell their stories in books and film. And that's what it's about. And so the whole idea is that I've been working on some amazing projects. We have the 10-year anniversary of 3 Feet from Gold coming out. But more importantly, before Napoleon Hill died, right before he did, he has his final book. It was called Success and Something Greater. And the publishers never did that title. So the Napoleon Hill Foundation just assigned it to Sharon and Lecter and I. And our final book coming out this year will be called Success, or next year, Success and Something Greater. And it's all the amazing stories of traveling the world to meet the most amazing entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and tell their secret sauce or magic key to personal achievement. And I'll tell you one of them if you want to hear it. It's amazing. Please. So there's a guy named Fred. I keep forgetting his last name because his story is just blows my mind. He invented something called a jet ski. You guys have those in London, right?
Yeah.
So he invented the jet ski and he sold the patent for $75,000. And so I sat him down. I go, that just must drive you crazy. I go, it's a multi-billion-dollar brand and legacy you sold for 75 grand. And he looked at me, he says, no, not even a little bit. He goes, that 75 grand was the greatest gift I ever had. I go, what can you say? It's a $1 billion thing. He goes, no, you don't understand. He goes, when I sold that for 75 grand was all the money I needed at that time. He goes, it got my taxes paid up. It got my employees paid up. He goes, for 3 months, I paid my mortgage where I could sleep every single night, something I hadn't done in decades. He goes, it was the greatest little moment of my life. And in that moment of clarity, I realized that when I was a kid, I played with these little metal cars. And he goes, so I recreated those. And then I sold those rights to NASCAR for $251 million. He goes by having sometimes doing one deal gets you through to do another deal. He says, you never cry about what could have been, but you look at it as an opportunity and springboard for what's possible.
Yeah, that's great, Greg. What a great story. 3 Feet from Gold. I've worked with Sharon Lecter. She's a good friend. She's fantastic. I mean, you two are a full. So I know you share the story of 3 Feet from Gold, but for some of you that haven't read, obviously, Napoleon Hill's, Think and Grow Rich. I know there's a lot of people that have read it many times. I've read it 3 or 4 times, and it doesn't matter how many times you read it, things still keep coming back at you. I'll share this bit about the 3 Feet of Gold because it's such an important part, and obviously it's one of the books that you wrote with Sharon.
Yeah, so 3 Feet from Gold is about a gold miner who gave up 3 feet away from the biggest strike in history. And the moral keeps coming down to is how many times have we or someone we know quit one class short from a degree or sales or marketing? It's easy to quit, but it's the people that persevere and go that 3 feet more. They're the ones that come out on top. So the whole idea is that we went around and interviewed everyone from the creator of string theory to the guy building the elevator to space, from Miss America to Mrs. Fields Cookies. And we picked their brain to find out exactly their process to not give up when the going got tough. And that's what we created called 3 Feet from Gold. And that book was amazing. I'm going to tell you right now, it was the first deal in the history of the world. In America, we have a bookstore called Barnes and Noble. It's the last bookstore left. And we did a joint venture where they actually published the book themselves. And so what was cool is that, look, who's got a bigger email list, this little knucklehead or Barnes and Noble? And by teaming up and collaborating, they're the ones that helped bring it to the world and went to like 40 languages. It was phenomenal.
But it's based on the thing that you know, he didn't seek advice. The guy that had the gold mine didn't seek advice, and you know, didn't ask the right people, and the guy that kept the mine obviously was the one that made the money, didn't he?
You know, it's interesting. That's why you do your events. That's why I'm coming all the way from San Diego to London for this point. And everyone, just so you know, in our industry, this is called the T-ball. Like when you're a little kid and so when they're going to hit baseball, they put on a little tee so you can hit a home run. What he just did is set this thing up for everybody so we can tell this little story here. And it comes down to this. You know, I interviewed amazing people. The guy who created string theory said, successful people seek counsel where failures listen to opinion. Completely transformed my life. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, opinion is based on ignorance, lack of knowledge, inexperience, like a family friend who's never done what you're about to do. Counsel is based on wisdom, knowledge, mentorship. People have paved the way. He goes, if you go to a family friend and say you're going to write a book, they might talk you out of it if they've never written a book. If you go to Mark Victor Hansen or Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, they'll say, sit down before you get started. Here's what you need to know and give you counsel based on wisdom, knowledge, mentorship. He said, if we would spend our activities just and only seeking counsel and ignoring people's opinion, that's the day your life would change. So it completely transformed my entire existence. So when I wanted to be a best-selling author, I didn't go to people who wrote amazing books. I didn't want to be a best writing author. I went to Barnes and Noble and I bought every best-selling book. And I called those authors up, said, teach me. I want to do what you're doing. And I followed their successful actions. And here we are today. And I guarantee you this, when we are in London all together, you are bringing in, I saw your speaker lineup, the people that can offer counsel. The whole idea, though, is not gaining this information and putting on a little notepad and getting excited and fired up. It's about the application, because it's the action in the law of attraction that makes our dreams come true. You got to think it, feel it, but ultimately you got to get off your ass. You got to take action and you got to do it. And that's what your event is all about.
Yeah, thank you. It's a big gathering. You know, we had 12,500 people attend. Last year we had 180 speakers, so it was pretty phenomenal. And the energy in the room was electric. And one of the things, I mean, the reason I started doing it was obviously, you know, I've been doing events for 10 years, and I've done from, you know, 10 people in a workshop paying 15 grand or 40 pounds a ticket, $40 a ticket. And the biggest event at that point was around 1,200 people, I think. And one of the things that I've experienced is that in my mind, being a promoter and having worked with so many good people is that there's so many different kinds of workshops going on all the time, everywhere, that, you know, we just get confused. Where shall I go? Where shall I go? And I thought, well, how cool would it be if I could put all this knowledge in one place for 2 days and just bring everyone together, and we all market it, we all help each other, we all support each other, and everyone's there and they can find something for. And we've got, I mean, this year we got one of the rooms I'm really excited about. We got it the Best Youth EXPO. So it's just literally under 16, 18-year-olds, all of them speaking, 20 minutes speaking. So I've got this family of 5. The eldest is 13, the youngest is 4. You know, they're all speaking. I've got the youngest vegan Daniel Bisanotti coming over. So we've got that. We've got a room for empowering women. We've got sorts of great things. But for me, my job is to bring the best. And that's why it's called the best you, not the average you, not the crap you. It's called the best you. And we bring the best people. And that's why Greg is coming over. Ladies and gentlemen, having been someone who's seen a lot of people speak, and, you know, I know who I want on my show. And at the moment I saw Greg, I said, Greg, because I did the expo here in Long Beach, and you said, listen, that's all great, Bernardo, but I want to come to London. So we made it a reality. You're coming to see us on 15th and 16th of February. And I'm saying, listen, if you're a professional, if you're a coach, if you're a trainer, if you're a speaker, you've got to come and listen to Greg, okay? If you're interested in connecting with great-minded people who can connect you with, because that's the thing is, you see, I know Greg now. And I remember last conversation we had on the phone, you said to me, Bernardo, just get on the phone. Let me know anything you want. Who do you want to connect? And just don't be shy. And that's the thing is when you meet people like Greg and you connect with people like him, it's the connections that he has. And that's why he does some phenomenal work. So I'm delighted to have you there, Greg. And I've just got a couple of more things.
And I'm looking forward to it. And the good news and bad news is I got to bail out of here in 5 minutes because I got to be up in Northern California. And door number 2, don't leave this part out. So we're going to let the cat out of the bag a little bit. So we've been talking, you and I, about doing our own little mastermind group while we're out there.
Yeah.
And a small selective group. So we'll announce a little bit about that when we're at the expo. But the realities are, I want to bring some of my friends, my allies, get your top friends and allies together in one room. And if there's about 20 of us and we're comparing ideas and pulling out our phone and saying, who do you know? Who do you got? And we can actually do this in real time, could literally cut and shave 10, 20 years off our lives in a positive way. Because the learning curve of having to discover for ourselves, I probably got the contact that someone else is looking for. And that's what I'm excited about doing.
And that's it. I think when people come to the event, they really underestimate the connections that they can make there. And that's what's happening. So, you know, we've got a phenomenal lineup of speakers, but what we are very excited about, as Greg mentioned, is that after the expo, you're going to have an opportunity to see Greg there. He's going to be signing some books. He's going to be saying hi, but we're going to be running a workshop together to be confirmed, but literally after the expo. So I'm very excited about that too, Greg. Greg, I want to thank you so much, man. You're an inspiration. You're a phenomenal guy, and thank you so much. Can't wait to see you in London.
Yeah, I'm trying to grow a cool beard like you. By the time I get there, I'll just keep squeezing until maybe we can pull this thing off. But I appreciate you, brother. Look, you know, the fact of the matter is you're doing the right actions in the right order. You're out to make a difference, and I appreciate all you do to make the world a better place. So thank you, and I will see you all in London. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Take care. Thanks all so much.
Bye.